So I started out actually. So my first entrepreneurial job was a small consulting shop that I was actually invited to join as a partner. I'm not going to name any names. I'm not going to name the. I was. This was sophomore year of college.
Oh wow!
So around 19 or 20, I think. I mean, I was really involved in the Boston College. I went to Boston College. I was really involved in the Boston College venture capital competition and like the whole circle there of aspiring entrepreneurs, and that's where I met the person who invited me to join this consultancy, and so I ended up joining. It became a 4-way partnership between myself, the person I met, and then 2 other members of the team. And we definitely learned a lot. We were all really young, late teens, early 20s, figuring things out, pretending like we were hotshots. And to a certain extent, I think looking back, we were definitely ahead of the curve. We were developing websites for law firms and for both small businesses and medium-sized businesses all around the world. And we just had no clue what we were doing. We were having a lot of fun doing it.
What was like your biggest, almost proud project you did?
The biggest project, and this is gonna lead into the reason why I have like a little PTSD from that first job, where I guess lessons learned is we closed on the largest rental real estate company here in Boston, or really in Massachusetts. And after we closed on that deal, 2 of the team members decided they were going to try to push the other 2 out, including myself, and do it in a really, just a really, what's the right word here?
Tactful or not tactful way?
Untactful. What's the opposite of tactful? Rude. Definitely rude. But just in a very, just a very mean-spirited way, and in a way to, counter to the values I later realized were really important to me in running a company, in treating team members. And for instance, they used like coercion tactics. They sat one of our other partners down in a meeting room and basically told her, "Hey, you need to sign this document, and it's going to give us, all the rights to
all the
equity, and you're out." Because we think it's the right thing to do. And it was terrible, hearing that story after the fact.
What was their reason? Just it was the right thing to do, or
honestly, looking back, it was just greed. Yeah, it's just greed. And it's been long enough for me to process everything and move on from it. But at the moment, when they tried the same technique on me, and I was furious. I didn't sign anything. I got up. I took my laptop, my computer, took my monitor, and just walked out with everything in my arms, office style, and dropped it off in my.
Is this me furious? Because I've never seen you angry.
Yeah. That was probably. Yeah, I don't get angry very often. That was one of the angriest moments of my life, and I remember sitting in the car afterwards with all my stuff in the trunk, and I was just sitting there and thinking, I was thinking back to that old phrase of success is the best revenge. I definitely felt vengeful, but I'm not an angry person. I just wanted to become better at the time, and so it was I drove back to my dorm, and I called my roommate and I called my other friend and I said, hey, we're going to start a new company. And we're going to do exactly what we just did. And we're gonna do technology consulting.
Love it.
And I know how to do it now. I figured out a lot of the secrets along the way. I earned my street MBA, and we're gonna do it right this time.
You had a new big client that you tried to poach, or no?
We did reach out to the big client that we wanted. I wanted to keep my distance a little bit, but I did find out. This is funny. So about like half a year in, like a few months in, I got a call from one of my other friends who was a mutual relationship with the other founder, and he said, "Hey, this guy is looking for an iOS developer and like someone to help out with this project. Like, can you help?" And I'm like, "No." Like, here's what happened.
Yeah, he's like, the backstory.
Yeah, he didn't know. I filled him in. He just laughed and he was like, "Well, that's hilarious because you're probably the only person I know who could do this work." And ultimately, a few years later, I spoke to the CEO of that real estate company, and he said they had to drop them because they weren't able to do the job. Yeah. So just desserts, I think, at the end of the day. But
so the way those, I mean, you're not still upset with them. In a way, it's helped you, right?
Do I hold a grudge? Yes.
You still do.
I still hold a grudge. Yeah.
I think years ago.
I know. It's maybe I have to forgive and forget. I don't know. I don't know. I think there are certain people in your life that get onto this little, for me, right? There's like this short list of people that I just will never interact with ever.
And you have a list.
Yes.
I like the list. How long is this list?
It's less than 5 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
2 of them. Wow. Okay. 2 of them are from this mitigating story. So there's 3 more. We don't have to name names. I know you don't like naming. Oh man. Okay. So back to the story. You started your own consulting.
We started our own consulting business, and we just started to network. We started going to events in the Boston area. It's actually one of the reasons why we ended up here in this beautiful office at the Cambridge Innovation Center, because the Venture Cafe, which we're sitting in right now, this weekly gathering of entrepreneurs in the Boston area was held here. And after I basically attended every single networking event in Boston. And I realized that like for most of the networking events, they were just filled with service providers like me. And we were trying to eventually it became like a lawyer pitching the tech consultant, and then like pitching the accountant, and there were no actual clients in the room anymore. And I realized too that.
You mind yeah. Okay, we'll just edit that. It's fine. Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Kind of close here. Is this how they do it in Joe Rogan?
Here, maybe. Okay, that's good.
This is good.
That's good. Yeah, you got enough space.
Yeah. So at one point I visited basically went to like every networking event in Boston and realized it's like that's not those aren't my values either. It's not like I don't have like a very salesy approach towards networking. I'd rather get to know people and try to help out. And when I landed here at CIC in the Venture Cafe, I realized this is like the best networking event in Boston. And they have this rule where if you can come for free, you can network, but after 3 sessions, you need to get at least 3 people to vouch for you. Otherwise, you can't come back.
Okay, that are existing members.
That are existing members. Yeah,
that's a really cool rule.
Yeah. And and they really like filtered out all of the people who are here just to try to sell things and make money. So I found a great community here, and I kind of zoomed past some really fun times. But your original question was, what was one of the largest clients, or what was the top client that I enjoyed working with? And it must have been Jelly Belly. So at one point we got an intro to the person who was starting Jelly Belly in Saudi Arabia.
Okay. And this is with your original group?
No, this is with the new group. Yeah, it's a new group. And they were looking for someone to help build out their e-commerce website in Saudi Arabia. And so there were a few things that were really exciting about that for me. First thing was, of course, working with a big brand. It's one of the first times doing that.
Yeah.
Two was working with someone internationally that I never worked with. And then three, it's with like jelly beans. So
everyone was Jelly Belly. Yeah, that's a really cool company.
We at one point we asked Jelly Belly to send us a sample of every flavor so that we could photograph it. We didn't actually have to photograph it, but we wanted to see if they would send us a box with every flavor, and they did.
You know, this is going on the internet. There's some guy in Jelly Belly that's going to be pissed at you.
That's 15 years. Yeah.
Well, you hold a grudge on those guys. You made this guy's list.
I'm sure they'll have a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some fun times like that. And one time we for a period we actually had an office down in the Seaport in Boston, like way before it was developed. And at that point it really felt like we were leveling up. We were going.
You graduated college. You graduated full time.
Yeah, this is like the first or second year that I had graduated along with my co-founders of that firm.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That must have been a great feeling, like being able to support yourself full time, have an office. Did you go to the Middle East to do the project, or
it was all remote? But you just reminded me, there was one time I was on vacation. I was on a cruise to the Bahamas, and for this client, they needed something like pushed out last minute. So they actually paid for my data connection while I was on the cruise ship.
Oh man!
To push some code, and it ended up being like hundreds of dollars of fees for like an hour's worth.
Yeah,
of connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some fun times for sure.
So how long did that last?
We ran that for about 3.5 years, and it actually led into my next company, which is my first venture-backed company. And that's because we picked up a client who became my co-founder for the new business. And I'm thinking about like some of the various projects we worked on during those 3.5 years, and we definitely tried to incubate a couple of projects while we were running the consultancy. And by incubate, I mean like create a product in-house, right? So in consulting, one of the challenges is that your growth is very limited by human capital. It's like how much time developers can put in, how much time salespeople can put in. Based off the number of clients you have, you kind of have to scale that up accordingly. Right. There's not a lot of economies of scale in consulting. And so for a lot of tech consultancies, they start thinking about, including us, start thinking about how to build a product in-house, a technology product that you can just scale up as a platform, as something you can sell to many people. So we thought about doing that a couple of times, and I realized pretty quickly after attempting that a couple of times that your heart really needs to be in it 100%. And focused on growing that product. Otherwise, it's very easy to fall back and have your time taken over by your core business. And so at the end of that 3.5 years, with this new opportunity, with this new client of mine who became my co-founder, we decided, okay, we're going to spin things down. I'm going to focus on this full time. My co-founders are going to go their separate ways and work on their careers.
Brendan, right?
Yeah, Brendan. That's right. Yeah, from Squaddle.
Nice. So, how long did your other co-founders continue to do business for a while? The consulting?
They didn't. Actually, they wanted to go back to a professional career, and so one of my co-founders, he took his PM skills that he built up while running the tech consultancy, and actually became a really successful PM later at Starbucks, and now Meta. And then my other co-founder ended up in M&A and went back to his home country of Korea.
Okay. But the driving force for you was like scalability and the focus and the dedication that you wanted to give to just one thing versus the consulting.
Yeah, I think it's the focus was like a requirement, I think, but what the driving force was really to build something that could change the world, and that could scale up very efficiently, and ultimately make a lot of money along the way too, right? And growing up without a lot of money, like financial success was always something that was important for me. But at that point, I was pretty convinced, it's in order to make a lot of money, you need to solve a really big problem for a lot of people. And so you need to really focus on that first.
So changing the world, you want to change the world because it can make a lot of money.
Changing the world is maybe like a personal goal.
There is intrinsic.
And then I think I think financial motivation is definitely important. Was it the number one driver? I don't think it was the number one driver at the time, but it was
the financial or the non-financial aspect.
I think financial, like it's all on kind of even footing. It was like financially driven. It was big opportunity, like very exciting. We felt like the journey would be really, really fun. And so like all those things combined, like lifestyle, economics, timing, just felt right.
Yeah. No, I love that because like if I think a lot of people when they start off, they're like, what can I do to make money, or what kind of problem I can solve, right? But if you think at a big level of how you change the world, you can think more creatively, think bigger.
Yeah.
So I think that is something very different about you versus a lot of other entrepreneurs. In my space, at least, I think you probably know a lot of those kind of folks, right? In the VC world.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the VC world. It's a requirement to think big, right? And to figure out how to build something that can scale up very quickly.
So what was this product, and how did you go about raising money? Because you never raised money before, right?
Never raised money before. But I knew I could do it to a certain extent. I knew that there were companies out there that were successfully raising money. And
how did you know you can do it without never doing it before? That's not what most people think.
I think it's just it may be a personality trait. I just love to jump into things, and I feel like in most cases, with a certain level of caution, right? Like I can do things, like I can usually like figure things out along the way. Probably a lot of risk, a lot of risk tolerance. But it also felt like I didn't have a lot to lose at the time, right? it wasn't like I was making a six-figure, seven-figure salary, with a huge huge bank account where if I stopped what I was doing at the time, I would lose out on all that opportunity cost, right? We were kind of like starting from scratch, and so we just felt like we had a lot of options for like what we could do, and a very long runway for accomplishing things. At the time, our expenses were really low too. So how did we get started in fundraising? So I think looking back, there were a few things that we did right, and like a few things that we thought about in the right way, and a few things that we maybe like put the cart in front of the horse. But the one thing I think we did right was we figured out a really big market opportunity first. Like what's a really big problem that a lot of people are facing, at the big pain point. And then we came up with a solution, and we validated that solution very quickly. And this came from my technology consulting background, because our whole philosophy for that company was we'll build out an MVP, a minimum viable product, for companies in a very short period of time. And so our goal was to launch a product, quickly iterate on it, and figure out what people like about it, what they don't like about it, and continually improve. And that is one of the most important things that any startup can do, right? Is figure out a really big problem, deliver a product really quickly, validate it in the market, test it out with people, with prospective customers. And one of the first things we did for Squaddle.
Sorry, did you choose Brendan as a co-founder before you came up with this idea?
No, it kind of, we had gotten to know each other through the projects we worked on when he was a client of mine for my consultancy. And then we discovered this problem together as we were working on the project together.
So you identified the problem first. It wasn't like, I like this guy, he's cool, I think we could work together. It was like you identified the problem first.
We identified the problem first, and along the way we also got to know each other, and I think that was helpful for figuring out whether or not we could work together on this new project. But we also validated this concept, right? So we at one point we took the prototype that we built and we walked down Harvard Ave in Brookline, in Allston, Brookline, and we basically just walked into every single restaurant and retail store that we could find, and we just asked to talk to the manager, and we're like, hey, we had this problem elsewhere, we built this prototype to solve it. Is this something that's interesting for you? What do you think about it?
I love that.
And we went into like mom and pop shops.
Were you dressed up at all? Do you have business cards? Did you look professional? No.
Yeah,
we're like how you are now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're in a hoodie. Yeah.
I love it.
And for the most part, everyone was like excited to talk to us. They were like, "Oh, this is like cool. This is different than my day to day."
Yeah.
And
I remember you telling me about it, and I was like, "This is so cool."
Yeah. It's. I mean, it's. At the time it was even shittier.
Yeah, you didn't put that prototype in my restaurant, right?
But we got some really great feedback early on. Like we knew that like mom and pop shops, their feedback was, you know what, like, okay, so just to zoom back, the product that we sold was basically like a operating system for retail and restaurant stores, and this eventually became an operating system specifically for major like multi-unit retail and restaurants. Right? Today it's used in like McDonald's, 7-Eleven, Hyatt hotels, and a variety of big brand names.
And it started off as temperature monitoring.
No, it started off as task management.
Okay.
Yeah, operations management and like temperature monitoring, all that, all the fun stuff. Hardware came in later. But for the mom and pops, they were basically like, yeah, we're here, we're the cashier, we're the cook, we do everything, we kind of know everything's going on at all times, we don't really need something like this. So we're like, okay, that's great feedback. It was when we walked into the street and went into the Dunkin' Donuts, and we were chatting with the manager in their gym, and we showed him what we were working on, and he just laughs, and he says, all right, hold on a minute, you're gonna love this. He turns around, he walks into his office, and he pulls out this giant plastic bin full of these printed paper, like professionally bound paper books. And he just pulled out a few of the books, and he's like, "Oh, this is what we have to use today."
Oh man, it's like the red book.
The red book. Yeah, that's right. And he said we have to fill out one of these every month. We have like 5 or 6 pages every day with hundreds, thousands of tasks that we have to perform. Logging temps, just even simple things like these store opening procedures, right? They come in, it's the first thing the manager picks up and just goes down a checklist and
check employee uniforms,
exactly,
things like that, equipment,
right. Turn on the lights, throw out the trash, etc. And that's when we realized, okay, this could be a lot bigger than what we originally thought. We did think, okay, this is something that might apply to retail store managers in general. But when we realized that, when we heard that feedback, and we realized that this could really apply to the high end of the market with a high growth potential, right? If we were to work with Dunkin' Donuts, we'd be capturing, over 10,000 locations. Right? If we were to work with McDonald's, over 10,000 locations. Running a simple financial model showed us like if we could scale this up, if we can develop the software into something that competes with the existing solution. That was another important point, which said there was an existing solution for this problem, but just wasn't good enough.
Right.
And everyone wanted something better. So to that end, what we built wasn't a disruptive product, right? We weren't necessarily changing the way that people were doing things, but it was very innovative. It was a new way to solve an existing product. To go back to your original question about like fundraising, right? Why did we decide to do that? After realizing this growth potential, we knew we needed more developers. We knew we needed salespeople, and we needed to grow the organization. And started to think about what fundraising could look like, right? And this is one of the areas where I'm looking back and I'm thinking, wow, we're so naive. There's like so many better ways that we could have run that process. But for us at the time, just figuring things out, I actually think that it was one of the best outcomes that we could have had. So our first check-in was from a cold email that I sent to a local VC that had just established their offices, and I had recently read a news article on. And I saw them. I saw the potential alignment with what we were building, and I just guessed their emails. Just first name at website.com, and I shot out a couple of emails, and heard back from them basically next day to come in for a meeting. And so I think we really lucked out. I didn't run a sophisticated process. I didn't reach out to a lot of parties. We kind of landed our first investor through the first email outreach that we did.
And you landed that investor.
We did, yeah. We got a term sheet from them a week later.
Wow. Yeah. How much did you practice for this meeting? How prepared were you? Did you wear a suit?
Not prepared at all.
Hoodie?
I think I wore a t-shirt. Just very laid back. we came in for the meeting, and it was about 45 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes. Talked about what we wanted to build, our aspirations, how big the market was, and our product roadmap. And
do you remember
about them?
Do you remember how much you told them the market was?
So it's at the point in time, I think we spoke only about the number of potential restaurants that we could service, and it was about 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then we used that to kind of backfill some of the other calculations. But we would later discover that the total addressable market was over $1 billion.
Yeah, I'm just wondering like how your pitch changed as you got bigger and bigger, and if you started big or you started small. But it sounds like you started smaller actually.
We started smaller for sure, yeah, because I didn't know my numbers very well back then. I had roughly, had a rough sense of it. Again, first venture-backed company, super young at the time. Still, when we founded this new business, I was 23. I just turned 24.
Yeah. Are you able to share like ballpark how much you got?
How much we raised?
Yeah, from that first investor.
We raised it's about $100,000. Yeah,
just like that.
Yeah. Wasn't a lot of money though.
Well, for an average person, that's a lot of money, right? Most people don't have even 100,000 in savings, right? So it's pretty cool that there's this whole world where people just give away $100,000. Just like that. Definitely.
Yeah. And that was my intro to the VC world. And as I would later realize too. Yeah. But the ocean is even larger than that, right? And that was like me wading into the edge of it's like the little protected peninsula. Yeah. But there's a whole ocean out there in terms of financing and capital markets and there's a lot to cover from there to today. Yeah, tell me more about getting into this ocean. Well, what do you want to focus on? So you got your first 100. How much more did you raise after that? Like, what was that process? So the typical process for fundraising is you engage with an investor, and there's all sorts of different types of investors out there and different classes. But typically, you engage with an investor and you expect them to either agree to the terms that you're giving them, or you're waiting for them to give you terms on an investment. And that's presented in what's called a term sheet. Right? And a term sheet is basically like a human readable, typically like non-binding, but like heavily reputationally driven agreement that you're going to move forward on a deal if both parties sign that. Right? And that includes the high-level terms of the deal, including the valuation, how much they would invest, or how much other investors are expected to invest along with them, and other high-level rights that investors might receive. And the structure and the details that go into the term sheet and the benefits that investors receive will change based off like the class of investor you're working with and the stage of the company that you're at. So at early stage, like pre-seed, when you're just getting started, you have no revenue, you only have an idea. Terms that early on are typically very, very favorable for the entrepreneur. Right? They're very light. The intention here is to get in the early stage for a potential idea that could return a 10,000x exit for the investor.
So what did you do next from that point? With the money, did you go fundraise more, or did you start building stuff, or did you do both at the same time?
We did both at the same time. Again, a mistake, looking back. But that's how we took it, right? We started making a couple of early hires, and we started raising money from angel investors, and also kind of preparing ourselves for potentially larger priced seed round from institutional investors.
Where'd you find these angel investors?
I think the first network of angel investors that we reached out to was through the LPs or limited partners of this VC that first invested in us. So that really gave us a good network to start with, and then we kind of just branched out from that network. But we realized quickly too that there's a lot of, like you mentioned, a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of money out there to invest into early stage companies. And we realized soon that there were all these angel groups, professional angel groups of successful professionals and ex-entrepreneurs that meet every month and review deals and have millions and millions of capital in total to invest. And there were a few here in Boston that we ended up pitching to, and a couple that we started working very closely with as well.
So that was enough to get started, the angel investment, first investment?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But it was bumpy, right? And I think for a lot of companies, right, they have like a roller coaster ride when it comes to their fundraising and also their expenses, and we definitely rode that ride a few times. So again, like figuring things out early on in terms of how to raise money effectively, how much to raise, what kind of terms we should raise on. We were figuring that out along the way.
Can you get more into the ride? Like, what was some of your first big wins in terms of like client delivery? And then what was the journey for raising more money as time went on?
Thinking back to bear with me, this is a long time ago. When we first started out, it was over 10 years ago now. I think it wasn't until so we worked with some really great customers along the way, right? Like in the first 5 to like 8 years, including Chicken Rice Guys.
Yeah.
We had some really great smaller businesses that we worked with, and that was really enjoyable, just knowing that our product could be placed into so many diverse locations. But we never really saw the scalable traction that we wanted to see in launching like these major multi-unit restaurants or retail locations until maybe 7 years into business, right? 6 years, I would say. 2018, 2019.
This is when you really got some traction.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so we started off with a few brands around that time, including Dunkin' Donuts, Dunkin' Brands, McDonald's, Edible Arrangements was another one of them. And I think at that point we kind of cracked the code. That's when we kind of cracked the code in terms of like, how do we engage with these customers?
You knew you had to go bigger, basically.
Yeah. We were driven.
Is that something you found out yourself, or your investors were like, you need to do this? Or is it kind of a combination?
That's a really good question. I think it's hard to disentangle the motivations of like an investor in the company versus your role as the founder and CEO, because you have like the fiduciary duty to your investor, to like to the shareholders, right, to the board and to the shareholders. So I think it's together, right? So I'd say personally, I was continually motivated to grow the business as large as I could. And then for investors, of course, they want to see the largest financial return that they can. In terms of being pushed, though, I'd say our investors trusted us to try to grow the business as much as we could. And so it was figuring things out along the way, figuring out the right strategy and tactics to use to grow the business in the target market that we were focused on penetrating since day one, and just took that long to figure things out, make sure that our product fulfilled a substantial portion of the needs that our customers face, and then build up a sales strategy and a sales force that could start scaling things up. And it was around then that we started to see our first like hockey stick growth in the company, and that was super exciting. Right? Just to be able to see the charts, and see things go from 2013, go from like this, and then all of a sudden like start doing this. That's a really exciting.
With that one decision to work with larger brands.
Exactly. Yeah. And we actually, there was a pivotal piece of advice that we received from a famous and really well-known Silicon Valley entrepreneur, board member, and executive that I got introduced to, that I had a few really great, but quick but really great calls with, that just pointed us in that direction of like, hey, just focus on the enterprise brands, and and with the with the product that you've built, with the experience that you have, sooner or later you're going to figure it out, crack code, and we did.
I'm just trying to understand the different pressure between bootstrapping and having investors. So I guess maybe another way to frame it is like 1 to 10, what was your stress level just bootstrapping? If you could gauge your average stress level, versus Squatto.
It's been a long time, so my memory is a little bit hazy, but I'd say that bootstrapping is probably like a 5 or a 6, and in terms of stress, with like a venture-backed company, maybe like a 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
But you're saying for most people it might be more, right?
Yeah. There's definitely like circumstances where you've seen founders flare out, right, and burn out from the stress of growing a startup.
What do you think about made you be able to survive that whole process and that whole journey?
I think startups survive on hope to a certain extent, right? It's like optimism.
You are very optimistic, yes.
I think as long as you can cling to, and I mean, isn't that so cliche, but so it's also so accurate, right? Like startups are all about the vision, and like employees join startups because of the vision.
Yes.
Founders work on it because of the vision. Investors invest because of the vision.
You're selling vision, hope.
You're selling hope
to everybody.
Yes, yeah.
Your
And
employees, investors, yourself.
so as long as you have hope and you can believe in the outcome, then that dissolves a lot of the other negative feelings as you're building a company.
So that's the biggest thing for you.
I think so.
Hope. Yeah.
Well, cash comes first. Cash can give you a lot of hope.
Okay.
Yeah.
So going back to the story, you landed Dunkin', right? What was next after that? What was that hockey stick?
It wasn't soon after that we didn't land Dunkin' brands. We're still working directly with the franchisees. We really wanted to close that big enterprise deal where we could work directly with the major brand and then scale up with their help.
The lighthouse client, as you would say, right?
Yeah, that's right. And Dunkin' was definitely a lighthouse client, but to have like an enterprise lighthouse client would be massive for us. And so we worked for a very long time, very hard, to start signing on McDonald's operators. And just honestly, through a chain of both hard work and a lot of luck, we ended up in front of the right people at the right time for McDonald's, and we became the fastest vendor to ever get approved within the McDonald's vendor ecosystem. And we signed an enterprise deal with them in January of 2020.
How long was that process? I mean, it took years, right?
It took maybe 2 years of engaging with the brand in general, but really around, I want to say, a year or less of real engagement with the corporate team. Yeah. So it ended up being pretty fast, I think, all things considered.
How'd you do that? That's pretty impressive for any kind of client to go land McDonald's like that, let alone a startup.
So at that time, we kind of figured out how do we effectively work with the franchisees. We figured out all of the dynamics between them and their corporate team, and we were also just extremely lucky.
What do you mean by that?
Like so I can't go into too much of the details here, but there were programs that we kind of just slot right into at the time, and then they were open for a very short window, and we happened to be invited to a conference where the conference host chose like our specific location so that we had greater visibility, and the right people happened to walk by our booth
from McDonald's,
from their organization that was in charge of these programs, and that got us slotted in. Right? And it was,
can you share what programs these are? Or?
There were just I can't share the details, but there were like internal projects that
McDonald's
were already
like
in place.
Supplier programs.
Well, specifically around solving this problem that we wanted to solve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Because I think it's like something like 2% of buyers are actually actively trying to buy something like for a solution that they face.
It's, I mean, honestly, for a large corporation, for a public company, the company can only focus on maybe like one or two high-level strategic initiatives at a time, right? And we happen to be number 2 at the time in terms of
in this space.
Yeah.
And how'd you win out?
We just kept doing what we did best, and just kept delivering, kept upgrade customer service, which was really important to us. In the life of the company, I think we always had close to 70, 80 NPS, Net Promoter Score, which is world class, above world class. So I think it was a combination of right place at the right time, maintaining really high standards for customer success, and of course, like rapidly iterating on product and providing feature functionality.
And how many locations did you end up going into?
I don't know what the number is today, and our product is still being used in McDonald's today, but it's got to be somewhere within like 70%. 70%
tens of thousands
in the U.S. Yeah, so somewhere around that number.
You ever take a step back and be amazed by that, or you're
totally? Yeah. We had a visualization at some point where we had like a Google map with a pin in every location that we had live.
Yeah.
And at some point it just like filled up the entire US, and then it started expanding outside of the US too. And yeah, it was a great moment just to reflect and think about how many people we were impacting every day, right? Like to think that we were not just improving the lives of the staff in those stores, of which there could be dozens every day, per store who are working in that store using our solution, but also all the customers for these stores who were probably getting a better experience because the staff were doing a better job and had to spend less time focusing on things they didn't want to do.
Did you start feeling a sense of relief at this point when you started signing up these clients?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. It was a massive relief to sign that major enterprise deal in January of 2020. Now, unfortunately, 2 months later, COVID hit, and that was its own set of crazy, stressful headaches that we had to deal with every day. You're bringing a company fully remote, making sure that we could fulfill the deal and all this with all these supply chain problems. I'm very jealous of founders who like hit that inflection point and then don't have to deal with another set of issues right afterwards. I feel like there's probably like a point in time where you can like take a breath of relief and maybe like take a vacation, but unfortunately it wasn't possible for us.
You hit this hockey stick and then COVID hit.
Yeah, then COVID hit.
Yeah. So what was COVID like for you?
It was, I think like a lot of us, at first we just threw ourselves into work, and then very quickly you realize you're waking up, it's 7 a.m. and you're sitting at the computer and working until like 11 p.m. and then going to bed because there's really like nothing else. A, there's nothing else to do. Yeah. And B, we just had a lot of work to do.
And you just hit this huge client.
Yeah. So that and trying to make sure that the team is engaged, that morale is high, and trying to put out all these fires and sort out supply chain issues along the way was tough.
What was next after McDonald's?
That was it. I think I don't want to get too much into it, but there was a decision to sell the company, and we ended up selling it in a private equity roll-up in 2021.
Nice.
Yeah.
This was 2021. When did you start Spaceport?
In January of 22.
So you had like less than a year break.
Yeah.
I remember did you go to Scotland then? Was that your Scotland trip with Chuck?
No, that was in 19, I think.
That's far. That was way, okay. Yeah. Was that Hawaii?
That was right after, I want to say it was right after Hawaii.
Yeah. Okay. So how did you think of Spaceport and, how'd you get to that?
I was able to take a break and think about what I wanted to work on next, I had the financial flexibility to really not focus on just on an idea with purely like a economic lens on, but also what I wanted to work on personally. And I felt like I was always interested in like entertainment and like arts and gaming, but I never had the chance to dive into that. And so that became one of my personal requirements. I had to work in that space, and then had to discover something that was scalable, major problems, something I was motivated and interested in, and at the time started to chat with my now co-founder Lita around the ideas that we wanted to work on. So we had to find some alignment as well in terms of the projects we were interested in. And I think we figured out this new space that we're working in today for Spaceport.
How'd you go about, starting Spaceport? Did a similar path to Squattle?
Very different. Very different. In some ways, right? I think the strategy of figuring out the market size, figuring out a big problem to solve, building product and like testing and iterating that with clients, that's still there. But a few things that we did differently is we really fleshed out the market research more early on, and we built a very strong pitch around the vision of the company, and we raised money pre-seed this time instead of building out like an initial prototype. Right? We wanted to find investors that were very aligned with us. We wanted to run a tight process in terms of seeking a lead investor and bringing on follow-on investors for our first round. And we wanted to build the right team. We wanted to have enough capital to build the right team to go after this problem this time around.
Instead of the bumpy ride you
Instead of bumpy ride.
Before,
yeah, that's right.
Did you have like more credibility now where you didn't have to build a prototype? Is that why you didn't do it, or?
It's so hard to say that because a lot of things have changed, right? I think the amount of venture capital in the space has grown by leaps and bounds since 10 years ago. I think that the cost of creation, the cost to like run and grow a startup has decreased as well. So you have a lot more investments in the space. So I'm not going to say that credibility, like having a successful exit in the past, is not a big factor, but I just don't know how much of a factor it is. Right? I think that right now is a great time for like first-time founders to raise money as well. I think there's a lot of investors that believe in funding first-time founders too.
So, where are you at now with Spaceport? What are you working on?
It's about continuing to validate our initial vision, and we're post-revenue now, so we're focusing more on revenue generation, figuring out our scalable product market fit in the entertainment, gaming verticals.
That's awesome. Yeah.
We were able to close bigger brands, major brands more quickly this time around with the experience that I personally have built over the years, and also the team members that we've hired have accrued over time, and I think that's helped us accelerate the curve for this company.
We talked about it a little bit, but the other day. But how is it different this time around?
I think it's in many ways it's the same. I'm trying to think of the the major differences.
Less stress. What's your stress level, 1 to 10?
I think my stress is more constant. I don't really like, personally, I don't like to focus on stress. It also feels like wrong to say my stress is lower because I think that, again, like that, there's a direct correlation between that and like how hard we work, right? I think I'm a lot better at delegation this time around than the first time. I think I have stronger management skills. I'll say that the biggest difference is the first time around I had no context for anything, right? It's my first time around the amusement park, and I didn't know what to expect at every turn, right? And in some ways that was liberating, because if you don't know what to expect, or you don't know what other people expect from you, you can just do things your way, and you might do things better than how other people have done it.
Right.
But in other ways, you're like constantly, not constantly, but you're doubting whether or not you're doing things the right way. And or if what you do will lead to a good outcome versus, a better versus negative outcome. And I think this time around, I do have context, right? For a lot of the different stages and steps that we had to go through early stage, and for the next few years, for sure. I mean, like I've done that before. I know to a certain extent how people might react, how customers might react, how investors might react, and I think that makes decision making a lot easier and faster.
I feel like a big theme for you is just diving into things, like going to the restaurants in the beginning, cold emailing your first investor, even Spaceport. You just kind of dove into it right after Squattle. Is your ability to dive into things, is it driven by the pressure you mentioned? Is it the hope, or do you just not even think about diving in?
I don't think about it. I think it's driven by this weird, like, ultra logical process. This like ultra logical next step that I'll think about. In terms of what we need to accomplish. It's very goal driven. Right? It's
you don't
like
let your emotions, like the fear of going in there, get in the way of what needs to be done.
I'm definitely afraid. I think. I think I'm definitely emotional. I feel. I mean, that's what drives hope, right? Like, hope is a very strong emotion. I think that's what drives me forward. But I think it's sometimes being able to override that with here's what we need to do next, right? Like, and knowing that sometimes you need to, in the face of fear, take action. I think that's how courage is defined, right? Sometimes you need to have courage in the face of fear to take action, and I think I do that well. I think I do that often, and I think that all of them, people that I hire and the people that I work with, also have that quality.
It's not blind courage. You know the consequences, but you just choose to be courageous.
Educated guesses in terms of the best direction to move forward in.
I learned something new about you. I thought you just ignored the stress and just internalized it. Oh, you know. Huh?
I think a few years ago I would say that, but I think realistically, right? Also focusing on mental health and mindfulness over the last few years, having gone through these like hugely stressful moments with growing the company and the roller coaster, and then COVID, that gave me a better, more practical understanding of how I think and act.
I think that's a good place to stop with the professional stuff. Let's talk some shit. So going back to the fear thing, MMA fight.
Let's do it.
So Lee and I, we were watching MMA, and you said you can defeat a 140-pound semi-amateur MMA fighter.
It was something like 2 or 3 weight classes down.
Okay. Which would be about, 10 pounds a weight class?
I don't remember.
Yeah. How much you weigh, if you don't mind sharing?
180.
180. So you think you could beat a 140 amateur MMA fighter? Let's get this on the record.
Assuming I stay at 180?
Yeah.
And I have time to train?
You weigh in at 180. They weigh in 140.
Yeah. I think maybe 120.
120.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think maybe 120.
That's a big discount.
Well, okay. So the whole reason we had this bet is because I was saying how weight class matters a lot in terms of martial arts, right? And who were we watching at the time?
We were watching. I forgot. I don't know.
Or there's someone that we know who's also like yeah. I don't know. I feel like in my experience that's the case. I think the weight height matters a lot, and for something that's not like a pure grappling sport, right? MMA it does have a lot of grappling, so I might have a disadvantage there. But I think in general, there's a big advantage in.
I asked that because I was wondering, is it because Lee doesn't know this guy can kick his ass, or he's actually thinks he can,
I'm just diving in. I'm just figuring things out.
I think so. Tristan's 120. I think if Tristan was trained in MMA, he would whoop your ass.
You think so?
I think so. Yeah. He's
all right.
I mean, he's small, but you're not that much bigger than him, Yeah. Anyways, great talking with you, Lee. This is awesome. I feel like I've known you for so long, but I learned some new stuff about you. So
awesome.
Thanks for doing this.
Tristan's going down though.
Let's do this. Let's do this. One day when we're rich, let's hire trainers for Tristan, and then let's make this happen. Let's give him a year to train, and let's make this fight happen.
Is this the next Elon Musk?
You don't get any training though. You just regular.
I get no training. I mean, can I
You can do YouTube,
okay.
but no
right.
personal trainer.
All right.
And then we'll give Tristan the best trainer. I love how we're volunteering Tristan for this. This is going in the video.